Hey, everybody. welcome, welcome to Unfiltered and Intentional. Once again, like I had in the last podcast, I have to do a disclaimer just to say I apologize. For some reason, technology does not like me in the last 10 to 15 minutes prior to showtime for some reason. So I have not been on my A game, so I do apologize to you. But even though my technology is not acting right, we still have great information and content to share with everybody, as usual. But before we start talking about all that, I definitely want to pass the mic to Ty to bring us in.
So I see everyone jumping in now. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. We love you guys. Thank you for all of your love and your support. We appreciate you so much. Remember, YouTube and Facebook, please like, subscribe, and share. YouTube, Unfiltered and Intentional. Also hit the alert button so you know when we're going live. And then if you are on Facebook and you have not yet joined our Facebook group where we have some great discussion and a lot of content that we share every day, please make it over there. We see our numbers growing. And again, we love you guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ty. And I love the lipstick shade. Thank you,
I'm
Liz. Thank you,
You see
Specs.
this shirt?
And then I want to bring in Cash. We always bring him on here and there. But once again, everything that I do is intentional. So there's a reason why I brought him on. The topic of today is basically talking about voter suppression, and how our vote is systematically just kind of every little loophole that's happening. They're trying to cut corners and do different things while we're sleeping at night. That's when they're making their moves. So a lot of different developments have happened, but I definitely want to tackle this one because just in how many days was on the 26th, we had a representative for the state of Georgia just get locked up for her just wanting to see the governor sign this new bill into play. With that being said, before we start talking about that part, I just wanted to give a broad definition for those who may not even know in what aspect, how it affects us. So I wanted to bring Cash in because he definitely has a methodical way of explaining things, which you could get to the audience. Can you let us know about the suppression of our vote?
Absolutely. Voter suppression, especially within the Black community, has been around for a very long time. Black people actually have had the right to vote in America for a very long time. Back when we were first emancipated, we were given the right to vote. This was in the 1800s. And so we find ourselves almost 200 years later, still somehow, finding ourselves being disenfranchised, having a whole half of the country really trying to do whatever it can to not win over Black people. That would be one option, but, the strategy has never been that. The strategy has always been, let's just somehow try to have fewer Black people vote rather than do anything to try to sway them to our side.
And do you believe the reason for this is because majority of times African Americans vote Democratic?
Yeah, well, the thing is that, a big part of their strategy is attracting white supremacists. So you can't, it's hard to, to market to white supremacists and Black people at the same time. That's what their problem is.
Okay. I like that analogy. Thank you.
I can see that.
So Liz, I know that you're a big news buff and you're always listening to the news. And just to recap the audience, just in case, you haven't tuned in, a Black lawmaker in Georgia was handcuffed and arrested after she knocked on the governor's door while he signed into law a sweeping elections bill that will sharply restrict voting access. While the lawmaker's state representative, Park Cannon, has since been released from jail, she is now facing felony charges for attempting to watch Governor Brian Kemp sign a bill that's been described as nothing less than Jim Crow 2.0. With that being said, If that's going to be 2.0, what is 1.0? Because I keep always hearing that Jim Crow statement being thrown around. Is it really going back to those times in reference to just really blocking every aspect, everything that we move?
I think that this is not 2.0. This is 2.8. or something, right? And so, I mean, for the longest, I know I personally have been ringing bells and banging drums and gonging everywhere. Gerrymandering has been the first real problem. That's where they're redrawing the districts specifically to disenfranchise a minority and poor people. See, it's not just Black people or just Spanish, it's all minorities and poor people. And the reason for it is what we're literally voting for is power. We put people in positions of power. And so the last thing they want to do is put power in certain people's hands, the people that they find scary. For example, right? The people that will affect their bottom line. I mean, at the end of the day, the people that are currently in power usually belong to the top 3%, not the 1% so much, but the top 3, definitely top 8% economically. What you don't want is your lowly Walmart employee or Wendy's employee having a say in things like wages or, any labor laws or anything like that. The last thing you want is anybody from the labor class talking about labor laws, right? Or you don't want anybody of color talking about colored people's rights. The last thing you want is the people that need to be represented. So when you talk about the congresswoman that was knocking on the door, what you don't realize is what was happening behind the other side of the door, right? So you had, I want to say it was 6 or 7 elderly
seven including the governor.
Men. Right. Elderly white men. They were all white with white hair and barely any color, even in the tints of their eyes. Right. And they were signing a bill that affected people that don't look like them in front of a painting of a plantation. Mm-hmm. And here you have a Black lawmaker knocking. She knocked like this on the door. Now, I want you to remember that on January 6th, they didn't knock. Right? You know what I mean? They weren't knocking. They marched right on in there, ransacked the place. They were violent. They were vicious. They took people out and they walked right back out and went home. Some of them are being arrested. Some of them will never be arrested. This woman knocked on the door. She's facing felonies instantly. They had more police there to arrest her than they had at the Capitol while they were under attack. What are we doing?
Right.
Let me say this. So, and I want to propose this question to you, Specs. So, of course, last Sunday, we had an episode about just knowing the law, the state that you're in, when it comes to concealed weapons and these different things. So just speaking of that term of knowing the law, the question that I propose to you is, was she considered disturbing the peace by knocking on that door? Is there a law stating that in Georgia, their representatives can't just come in and, like, for instance, if I'm at work right now, you can't just come in my office and barge in like, hey, let me see what you're signing. Is there some type of law that says, hey, I am here to see what's going on? Because sometimes you do see that. Well, no, you ever see somebody protesting and they'll handcuff themselves or they'll knock or they'll do whatever. Was she disturbing the peace, as they put it, or, is this a law that they have there? Do you happen to know?
I don't know about Georgia, but
okay.
I do know troopers, generally, they will protect the governor. So the police will protect the mayor, troopers, the governor, and Secret Service, the president. Mm-hmm. So their main thing is protection of the governor. So if that door was closed, and they can run a whole bunch of laws against her just because of, if the door was closed and the governor's in the room, anybody trying to go into that room can be so-called breaking the law. So you have to watch out, because I visited the governor for Maryland a few times and talked to him, but I remember going through the security, and the troopers are no joke, and they're just there to protect the governor. So anything that can make the governor uncomfortable or his security, they can arrest you. Just like if the president was in there, the Secret Service was right there. You can knock on the door, but when they tell you to move back, you got to move back. So she was right, and she should have had representative. I mean, she should have been in there, but as a governor, he can say, I'm gonna close the door, you can't come in, and what? So
Okay. Okay. Now, another thing, and I want to actually, before I get to you, Ty, real quick, just to chime in, there was a comment here and says from Earl, I live in Atlanta. It's nothing new. We still are going to vote. Stacey and Mayor Bottoms have a plan. You know, it's interesting because as much as I know Stacey Adams has been doing the footwork, and there's many different soldiers out there, you know, of all genders and nationalities and stuff, just trying to, you know, push that memo to vote. At the end of the day, do you feel that for every 3 steps we take, Ty, we get pushed back 5 steps? Like, okay, oh, we did it, yay! And then like, oh.
I think that it's just a constant battle. Honestly, I think that regardless of what they put in place, we are still here to fight. Period. They may push us back in one sense, but I think we make, you know, leeway in another sense. For me, I always look at it as again more education. These are things that I really didn't know. Now I really have to check up on the laws and regulations and who runs what and how policies and procedures and processes go. So again, I understand that it's protection of a specific party, but thank you for being combative, because thank you for educating me.
Gotcha.
Good trouble.
Yeah.
Good trouble.
Yeah.
So Cash, now since everybody's saying that, you know, this the new law that has been passed is unconstitutional, and oh my God, there you can't even, and for me, that was like, wait a second. Like, and we're going to address, actually, let me address this comment right now, kind of ties into what I'm about to say. So Humble Lion says, why do our people think voting will help our people? The government is way too corrupt. They change the rules against us at will. So we're going to address that comment, but just to piggyback a little bit, I mean, at the end of the day, if it's so unconstitutional, are we able to take this and take it to the Supreme Court? I know you was mentioning something about the Supreme Court, of course, being mostly Republican. Is it a dead at the door?
Well, the thing is this: right now, the Congress is trying to pass HR 1, the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill, which will try to put in some protections and remove some of these laws and things like that. It was a time back in 2013 where the Supreme Court had struck down part of the original 1965 Voting Rights Bill, where that bill basically required states who were pulling all these shenanigans, because really they throw everything but the kitchen sink. You know, they whatever they could try, they do it. You know, a little suppression here, you know, remove the mailboxes, like whatever. If it could shave 10 votes, they would. Whatever they can do. I said a thing. They was like, someone had a Facebook page. They was telling people they could vote via Facebook, so they didn't have to go to the polls. And people actually,
I saw that. I was like,
believe that.
Billboard to the wrong.
Yeah. So however, they can shave a few votes. They're certainly throwing everything out there. And it used to be a thing where these places that did that, the federal government could step in. The attorney general could say, well, we have to review your voting laws before you can just enact a voting law. Like what Georgia just did, they would not have been able to do. Federal government would have to have given clearance prior to that law being able to be signed and be enacted. The Supreme Court basically struck it down, saying it was a technicality, saying that the formula that Congress was using to determine what states had to go through this process was old and antiquated. Some of the data was old, or the way they was arriving at these decisions were a little old. Basically that, okay, well, you just can't say that Southern states have to go through this, right? Because of their history of Jim Crow and all this. This is now, the 2000s or whatever. What about Northern states or whatever? Mm-hmm. So, and they kind of use that as a way to gut it. And basically like, well, Congress, you have to make a new law, a better law. And that's what Congress is trying to do now. But in the Senate, they really don't have the votes it would require to overcome a filibuster. You would need 60 votes. Right. And right now there's 50. Democrats. And that's not even saying you're going to get all the Democrat votes on this, surprisingly. So, the where it's kind of at as far as that goes is it's already passed the House. And, it got to go somewhere with the Senate. And, right now it's just a matter of are the Democrats going to vote to get rid of the filibuster so that they can pass this? Right now, the president himself seems reluctant to even be full-throated and state that that's what he's willing to do. But unless they're really willing to do something out of the mainstream or out of the ordinary, I don't see how that bill is going to be able to pass.
So I want to go back. Thanks for that, Cash. I wanted to go back to the comment here that Humble Lion stated, because a lot of African Americans that I ran into feel the same way. Why, once again, reading it again, why do our people think voting will help our people? The government is way too corrupt. They change the rules against us at will. Before you say something, Specs, I just wanted to put out there to anybody just to say, do you think that mentality would end up losing? We end up losing people that way. We end up losing the youth, because at the end of the day, I see it. I understand. If you don't choose to vote, definitely that is your right to do. I mean, you have the right to vote. And then if you say, hey, I'm just going to sit around and do it. I remember talking to somebody and they was like, well, you know what? They're both bad. Trump is bad. Biden's bad because Biden did this and this and Trump did this and this. But I was like, when you actually vote on the ballot, there's other things that are going on. It's like, hey, are we going to take a road and run it through your whole neighborhood and we're going to rezone everything? So some people who have never even voted don't even know what the ballot says. So yeah, you're not thinking about, hey, I don't like this guy versus this guy. Just down the ballot are a whole bunch of topics that may affect you. Like, man, I love this so-and-so over here, the free clinic that they put up here, but then they're going to put a road straight through it. So I encourage everybody just to take that opportunity to vote. Like I said, I understand the ideology behind, wait a second. And I think there was a comment a little bit earlier saying, Black people originally voted Republican. There's so many different caveats to that. But once again,
that's another.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But once again, though, please look at the ballot because there's so many things. Are we taking away the latchkey program for all the kids? You want to keep that program so they ain't on the street. So, there's so many different things. But go ahead, Specs. I know you was raising your hand.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering right now.
It's okay.
Does your vote have value? Now, when something doesn't have value, nobody wants to steal it. Nobody wants it because it doesn't have any value. So you first ask yourself, does your vote have value? So if it didn't have value, they wouldn't try to steal it from you. One, right? So what they do is they play the mind game. So they use some of us against some of us. So they'll tell, and this is propaganda. So they'll tell some of us, your vote doesn't count, you shouldn't vote, right? So then those people tell their friends, you shouldn't vote. 6 degrees of separation. So what happens is that in numbers, we don't vote, so we get outvoted. Right. That's always been the case because it works. So when you have people saying my vote doesn't count, that doesn't come from our community. That comes from someplace else that's implanted in our community to say we have no power, so why try anyway? That has worked. What changed was this election showed that the pandemic had evened the playing field. So you couldn't gerrymander, you couldn't use that propaganda. Everybody had the opportunity to vote equally. And what happened was we changed stuff. So now they're trying to bring it back to what it was. And you have to know that you have value, your vote has value. When you listen to the person that's telling you that's not coming from us. It's not coming from us. We have implants that will tell you that you have no value, your vote has no value, so why vote? But they vote. If they vote and they tell you you shouldn't vote, there's something in there. So that's all I'm saying is your vote has value, even though they tell you it doesn't, but they vote.
Okay.
I mean,
go ahead.
To that same effect, and I'm tying in what both Kia and Specs said, right? There are other things down ballot, right? And so I know Kia mentioned the roads and such, but even things that are more specific. Lately, we have been voting consistently in every state on things like legalizing drugs. Well, how does that affect our community? Right. And so
No,
regardless
true.
of how corrupt the politicians are, I mean, if men are in jail, that's a win. Right. And so if we're decriminalizing things like marijuana, funny because Wall Street's been on coke since always, right? But no one ever talks about the coke problem on Wall Street. What they talk about is all the potheads in the hood, because that's the end of the world, right? Because how many potheads run out and shoot the place up? You know what I mean? But we're decriminalizing that. Things that have been on the ballot, minimum wage. How much does that affect our community, right? So it's not always about, you know, them giving us specific power, you know what I mean? But I mean, how much does that difference make when you go from $8 an hour to $15 an hour to $20 an hour? What does that actually look like for your community? When they actually do put money into the schools and where we educate our kids, what does that look like for our community? You know, things like that. So the idea that, you know, no one's going to get in there and do things specifically for people of color, well, I mean, then don't do anything specifically for me, right? But do something that affect me in some kind of way, and I need to be a part of it. My voice needs to be heard.
Okay, you want to Ty, go to the comments, but start from
Where you want me to go?
Oh, we can start with everyone loves Liz's shirt. Giving a shout out to her shirt.
Yes, love the shirt, Liz.
Thank you.
It says what?
What does it say?
Voter suppression equals eternal damnation. So, and I know that you guys can't see the back of it, but what I did was I took 3 specific Bible verses that kind of make that argument for me. I'll read them to you really quick if you have time. So on the back, it says, friendly reminder. 1, blessed are those who thirst for righteousness. 2, thou shalt not steal. 3, ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up. That's Matthew, Exodus, and Proverbs. So you don't have to argue with me that voter suppression is sin. Stealing is sin. No questions asked. So if it's worth your eternal damnation, keep going for it. You'll meet hell here and you'll meet it later too. Keep going.
But that would be for our audience who believes in Christianity. We have a lot of listeners who don't follow Christianity. I just want to put that out there. But no, I do love this shirt though.
Thank you.
But can you restart from Mark Logan and down? Yeah.
Got it. So Mark Logan, but she didn't barge in. She tried to get invited in. Hence.
Right. She didn't touch the doorknob at all.
Okay.
She knocked.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have our people were not in the 2 Americas. Our people are not in rulership.
Well, that goes back. I want to say that goes back to what, Liz had just stated in reference to there's a lot of things that still, affect the community. A lot of times when people vote, unfortunately, even for mostly our community, we go out for election time when it's the big ones, like, the presidency and these things. But I mean, we're not voting for the local stuff. Even Trayvon Martin's mother and the other young guy that died at the gas station, she's in the a position of power now where she's a representative in these different things. I think she's the lady's a part of the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. But with that being said, we're like, hey, let's put ourselves in office, but are we even supporting our own people once they are in? Go ahead to the next comment.
Which, speaks to this. Eventually, those old white men will be gone.
And there'll be new old white men.
But
wait,
girl, and they have more to take their
right.
And some of our people too.
Yes.
Go ahead. Wait, before you even say that, and I think I have this argument with a lot of people all the time. A lot of times now people are like, what, we have to have that rainbow coalition type of thing. Everybody needs to be at the table. If the mindset doesn't change, it doesn't matter what shade of color you are. Literally you could be sitting next to a unicorn. I always throw those unicorns in, but you could be sitting next to anybody, a rainbow, whatever, if the mindset is there, it doesn't change.
Mm-hmm. But it's the gatekeepers. Everyone has a different mindset. We can't force people to believe our own ideologies, how we think, whatever. But again, we have to be able to make sure people are held accountable. And their lack of accountability for what they do and what they've done is just preposterous. Like, it makes no sense. Where are we at?
With Earl. Okay.
The only
Okay,
yep, hold up, is Joe Manchin.
He needs to go too.
That's
Bye.
actually a good comment, Paul.
And okay, most people won't think for themselves. They need directions.
Very true.
Absolutely. And then look at history. It speaks for itself.
And then amen.
Liz.
Amen, Liz. No, and it's interesting because a lot of times we think to ourselves, we get these individuals out, but there's still people that are blocking. Like he said, Joe Manchin, he has to go as well. I mean, we have to literally sit and do our research. But then I want to pull it right back to what Humble, man, you made a good point, Humble Lion, because, and I was going to do a show about it, but I have to put a little bit about, of it in it, because right now the Black vote normally drives that Democratic win. And we have Biden in office. And in what? Biden has not been in office for that long as a president, but he's been vice president. And then he's also served, us for 47 years. And if you look at his track record, there are some things we can literally say he has credited and we can give him props on. A lot of times I say, you know what? He has implemented things for domestic violence. If you are a survivor, I'm giving you a high five, because thank God he changed some things about that and the way we look at those things. But in general, do you think that the Democratic Party, Kashim, Specs, Liz, I know yours regular Todd, you think they pander to the Black vote? I mean, because you don't see them normally. And then all of a sudden around election time, they out there fish frying. They out there at the churches on Sunday. They singing Amazing Grace. And, they're doing different things. They're out there with the marches. They're getting into good trouble, and it's just like, well, wait a second. Where were you all these other times when we needed you? So I just would love to take anybody's opinion and reference to, do you feel that they're pandered to the Black vote? And then all of a sudden, when it's time to show and prove, it's like, okay, here we go again.
Well, that's true. They do, but we don't hold them accountable, because when election's over, I know, being in Baltimore, everybody that had the hoorah and all that stopped. They usually just stop. So the politicians stop, the community stops, and we don't do anything. So let's take the Jewish community, because I used to work on radio, and it was funny. It was a Black-owned station run by a lot of Jewish people. So you can't do certain things in that community, the Jewish community. You cannot. You can't. But you know what? Because they hold you accountable.
Yes, they do.
They hold you directly. If something happens, they are on it. What we do, what the government gonna do, we don't directly try to hold you accountable unless something big orders to police. But generally, we don't. We don't hold ourselves accountable, and we don't hold our community accountable. So once we start doing that, use the Jewish community. Go to a Jewish rec center or a temple. Watch how they do business. You don't gotta do anything different. Do that. Just do that. They hold themselves and their community accountable. So if something happens, everybody's on it. Not every 2 years, not every 4 years, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we need to do that. We need to be knocking on that door every vote knocking on that door. So they open it and say, all right. Don't knock every 2 years. Don't knock every 4 years, every day.
I love that you said that. I definitely want everybody to still answer that other question, but we do not hold people accountable. I do not know why we are pacifists. And it's funny because I think that's another propaganda that comes out there. Like, as soon as we have a weapon, as soon as we have a voice, it's like, hey, chill out now. Hey, what's going on? It's like, we cannot be the ones, like, it would never, in our minds, there may be small sectors like, yeah, we need to raid the Capitol. But as a group, we would never just be like, yeah, we're gonna do this, because we already know before we even get on that block, we be shot dead. Like we could never just
They
storm
would
something.
bomb
We
our
don't.
whole
Yeah,
community.
they would. They would.
They will
Yeah, thank you,
shut-
Ty. They would drop a bomb on us, just like they did
Literally.
Tulsa. Just like boom, you know.
Well,
Go ahead, Cash.
part of the problem with that is that, you know, like those people that stormed the Capitol, they were very clear on why they were storming the Capitol and what was at stakes for them, you know, and for them, you know, and more than just them, you know, white supremacy, the thriving of, you know, a Judeo-Christian Western civilization where you have these majority white nations that are owning and controlling most of the resources and have most of the defenses and weapons and everything on planet Earth. That's the plan for you know what I'm saying, for another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. And nothing's more important than that. And even loosely, all of them understand that, and you know, Republican, Democrat, both sides. And when you get to Black people, you have this state of confusion that we've been kept in since slavery, where we're constantly fighting these little battles, right? Even take this whole voter question, this whole thing right here. I mean, so we put all this energy into this battle, this one battle, right? And we got a forest full of battles. And we can't even see the forest. We just seeing tree after, like whatever trees in front of us, that's all we see at the moment. And we never really get to tackling or get to putting together a real strategy on how we're going to deal with this forest, because we're just constantly always dealing with the little trees that pop up. And so I think when we really put it together and we think on two things, one, what do we want? Right, as a group. Now, I laid out pretty clearly and concisely what it is that, you know, dominant white society wants, right? That's pretty evident. And so Black people, you know, have to really decide, what is it that we want?
But Cash, don't you think it's so much divisiveness within our community? And of course, I mean, you think of any type of nationality. I mean,
it's necessary.
And I understand that, but take Hispanics. I don't care who you are. They listening to somebody's abuela. You know, she talking, the whole neighborhood is listening. Don't make a difference. You know, even Caribbean people, Asian community, everybody's together, and they seem to have that plan of how we move forward. Within us, it's those little sectors. So you have ADOS, right? You're part of ADOS. So ADOS feels this one way. Then you have the NAACP feels this way. Then you have and nobody is in sync, and everybody's beefing with everybody. Ice Cube, for example. Here's a rapper or entertainer who has his power and influence to say different things. As soon as he says, I have an agenda, guys. I have an agenda. I'm willing to give it to anyone who will listen. Republican, Democrat, Independent, your next door neighbor, your mama's boyfriend, she's cheating on her husband, whoever would listen, I'm willing to give it to. Soon as they heard of Trump, you a sellout. Oh, wait a second. Yeah. They don't talk about Black women like that. What's going on here? It had so many different things. So even when you have, once again, like you said, Cash, what is the plan for African American people? No one can seem to get it on the same sheet of music. And then,
especially now that you're introducing corporate dollars into the equation, now you have people in competition for who's gonna be seen as that, you know, go to or whatever. You know, when I'm at work and, you know, the CEO sends a blast email and say, hey, this month, you know, they're going to go ahead and send, you know, $1 million to, you know, charities or whatever who, you know, fight for, you know, social justice awareness or whatever. You know, you have people who are fighting to be at the top of that ticket, at the top of that list. You know, when the corporations say we're going to send out that money, you know, who is that big bulk going to go to? Mm-hmm. So, you know, and again, this is all very well designed. This is another tree. This is another tree. Everything we probably bring up tonight is just going to be another tree. And we really have to decide. So if you say, okay, you know what, we want our own country in the West Indies or something, right? Say that's what Black people had kind of coalesced around. It wouldn't matter nothing about voting. Why would we need to be arguing about voting if we want our own country? But for the fact that we don't know even what we want, we really don't know what to ask for. And the last part of that is once you know what you want, once you've made that demand, what are you willing to do if the other side says no? How are you going to compel that other side to do what you want? And if they don't, what is going to be real actual repercussions that you're ready to?
And we saw
Wow, that's a good question.
Day, January 6th, what they were willing to do.
Exactly.
Right? They
will
always go that extra mile. That's they will. They will always go that extra mile to protect their beliefs, their money, what they consider their land, their property.
A whole entire civil war, 500,000 dead. That's what they're ready to do to keep this.
And I like that analogy with the alls we see is trees, and it's just like, but we know those trees were planted. Those trees didn't come out of nowhere. How deep rooted is it? How many trees do we really have to go through? Again, these are not just all of a sudden things that are just coming up. These are things that have been put in place for a very long time that strategy. When this hits, this is what we're going to do.
But we seem to fall for the old okie doke all the damn time.
Yeah, I don't think there's an area you could bring up that I wouldn't be able to point out how systemic racism.
So before you jump into the statement, Liz, and before we get back to the comments, it's so interesting because of course, while we're talking about this, other topics pop up, in the world, and not even to go into what the topic was about, but I was really stressing on the community. I called you Ty earlier today, and I was talking about, I guess the old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, is dead at the door. And the individual says to me, well, you know what? I'm getting my money. I don't care about the next person. It seems like African Americans are they're into their individual selves, the with them, what's in it for me. And if that's not it, like, you know what? I really do not care if you guys are on crack, dope, sell. I don't, as long as I'm getting paid, I do not care. So do you think because we lack the resources, we as a whole, that when that carrot comes dangling, a lot of us are just like, you know what, money, stimulus checks, tax refunds. So we don't even care about the real issues. Why do I care about the real issues and talking about voter suppression? My stimulus check just hit. I'm finna do this trip. I'm trying to get my girls together. I'm trying to get this hair laid. Do I care what Stacey at? Really? Do you think that's what it is?
Again, that's because people don't have something to really go after. I was reading recently MLK talking about Gandhi and what he was able to do, how he was able to take these just really poor people in India, the poorest of people, and roll the British right out of there just, on sheer will. Once he laid out what it was, this is what we're going to do, come hella high water, and we're not even going to use violence. We're just going to use utter persistence. We're going to show up every day the same way, utter persistence, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And they were so committed because once you paint that picture for people and they understand what's at stake, people are not going to go out here and risk hell and high water for some of this stuff that people are talking about. For people going to say they don't care. It's not even for voting rights, not even for
Right.
Yeah.
It's not enough. It's not big enough.
What was you going to say, Liz?
A lot.
It all started.
When you talk about my mind goes everywhere. I'm like squirrel, right? Just like that. So, all right. So here's the thing, right? Is going back to what Specs was saying, right? So the Jewish community, they are tight knit, right? Here in Florida, we have a city called Kissimmee. For anybody that doesn't live here, let me tell you a little something about Kissimmee. Kissimmee is Puerto Rican owned and operated with no shame. Same goes for Miami. Miami is Cuban. Like it's Cuba North is what it is, right? And what's really fascinating, if you ever have a chance, I promise you, take a look at it, right? Those people, they come together as a community. They make a list of what they need in order to thrive, and they go after it. And I mean, they go after it relentlessly. It is something to admire. It is a sight to see. If you say that, you know what we need, our kids aren't graduating and they're not going to Yale, right? What they do is they implement systems to keep them in high school. And when they graduate, there's literally a school in Kissimmee that if you're a resident of that county, you go to check that technical school for free. That is it. And I'm telling you, they run the classes in Spanish and English. I mean, it's fascinating. And I'm sure that Miami has similar programs, but you know who represents them in the state legislature? And for Miami, it's Cubans, right? Everybody knows Marco Rubio. You know where he's from? The Cuban part of Florida. And they sent him right on up to where they need him to be so that they maintain control at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, at the city level. They are running their own lives, right? We barely have anything like that. Some pockets here and there. If you look at people that represent California, by and large, California's representatives are very mixed, just like California is, right? In New York, they sent AOC up there because who's going to represent the Bronx besides AOC? You know what I mean? And those things make sense. But everywhere else, where else do we really have that? Every now and then you get a pocket here and there, but most certainly not enough to actually truly represent our interests, right? So that's one of the first things that we need to do is make a list of what do we actually need? Not want, not what sounds cute. What do we need to thrive? Not just survive, but to thrive. What does that really look like, right? Stop letting them make us comfortable with little pacifiers. It started a long time ago when they built the projects and said, but you can stay here for $18 a month. They did that on purpose.
Right.
That's on purpose.
And put in the black code that if you lived in the projects, you couldn't vote. I mean, you couldn't carry a gun. You couldn't,
all kinds of stuff they put in there, you know. I mean, but who wouldn't be happy for ultra over affordable rent, right? And not to say, but that works for that pocket where those people are. And if you notice, they do it by droves. They don't put one or two people in the projects. They put you in there by the tens of thousands. How many people can fit on one block of projects in Brooklyn? Right. And so things like that, they make a difference. And like Kia said, they dangle a carrot and there we go. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. And we're constantly looking for that. A couple months ago when they were talking about the stimulus check, I remember speaking to a friend who was very, very upset that Nancy Pelosi did not accept the deal for, I think it was like $800 at the time. And I said, why would she accept? What is $800 really going to do for you? Can that pay anything? No. What is $800 going to do? Do not be upset because she didn't take the first thing that glimmered and shined. You know what I mean? Do something that's going to have a lasting effect, right? And not to say $2,000 is it either, because again, for a lot of people, if you went through this pandemic and you haven't been working, how many months of rent are you behind? And how much is $2,000 going to do for you? There had to be other things in there. She held out. We got quite a few things in there. Is it perfect? It's never going to be. So we got a whole lot more than $600 or $800 that they wanted her to grab at the first chance.
So good points. Thank you, Liz, for that. Ty, can you do that comment?
I've been looking at this one. Black people, number one power is money. We are the biggest consumers in this country. Our biggest problem is trust and unity.
Yep.
Yeah. Unity first, then trust. Yes.
We also had, that's the left-right paradigm. On a federal level, our people just have the illusion of inclusion. Even on a local level, drugs are still in our communities and get rid of property taxes. And then, again, apparently knocking is a felony for... Right. So sometimes it feels as though the Democrats aren't as bad as Republicans because it feels like they're too complacent and slow to action. They get their votes.
That is so true. Watching paint dry.
You know, jumping back in there with Georgia, guys, we're watching this like there's nothing we can do about it. There's a bit that everybody can do about it.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk
Okay.
We should definitely hold out representatives. We should definitely hold our representatives accountable, no matter their party. This is how we will finally see reform. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the perks of being on top for the 300 to 400 years. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys. There's a lot of comments. Yay. Yeah. Mark, Logan, we need to find the common thread between us and build from there. So that goes to what you were talking about, Cash. And then do we lack resources or do we misappropriate our resources? Yeah. Yeah, that's
that was a good one. That was a good one.
You go, yeah. Mark, regardless of race, there appears to be a lack of human compassion. No one cares until it happens to them. And we say that all the time. It's never our problem until it's until it's
your problem.
But you know what, Mark? And it's crazy because for that comment there, that's for every single thing. I mean, we can think about COVID. Oh, COVID ain't real. It ain't this. It ain't this until all of a sudden, Auntie Sue caught it and she can't make it out the hospital. Oh, now it's real. Now wash your hands.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now wash your hands.
And then, wow, Liz, I'm digging this conversation. A lot of truth and knowledge here. Yeah. Go, Liz. Our people are under a biblical course from the Most High. You will never see a Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, etc., killed with no justice from another nation of people constantly like us. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. And then Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Israel are all nations. We as Blacks don't have a nation. We don't even have communities anymore for the most part. So we struggle with the code, agendas, and such.
So Daniel Bradley, you're on fire with your comments now.
Right.
Hey. We got to give a shout out to you.
Right?
You on it. No, it's interesting. Just jumping back on the conversation that we were talking about in reference to there's stuff that we can do, even though if we don't live in Georgia. And I wanted to talk about that because, and I don't think I saved it. A lot of times, guys, I don't write it down. I'll take a picture of it. And I have so many different notes on my phone. I won't do anybody the justice of running through it. But I seen something where it was a representative saying that they're urging corporate America to take a stance. Because I know Cash had mentioned about corporate America. And here's the thing, corporate America stamped certified Black Lives Matter. The NBA did this, and this. So you have a lot of different Nikes and this, and, the different corporate organizations saying, yeah, take a stance, change now. Cadillac, we have arrived, whatever. They can now do this. Oh, yes, there's a director who just came out, said he will no longer film in Georgia until this voter suppression thing ends. They have to change. So do you think that more and more corporate, entities will jump on this bandwagon? Because one person that we do have that's a big money maker in Georgia is Tyler Perry. He's a billionaire with himself. Everybody uses his studio, from all different types of movies. Do you think that this is going to be something that we can do and pressure them?
Yes.
Well, I certainly think corporate America has shown more willingness to move in a direction, positive for us than the politicians or anything have. And if we know anything about America, the corporations, definitely own and run the politicians. So really, if the corporations start coming out and saying, they want this thing to be this thing, a lot of times it happens in short order. So, us being able to get these corporations, and also if you're talking about short-term goals, a lot of how that racism shows up is through our underrepresentation in these corporations. I was talking to you earlier, this great Cadillac did that little commercial with Tamika Bowery and all that, but that's not really what it is. Cadillac, what does your supply chain look like? How many Black subcontractors and contractors do you have in your supply chain and stuff? Are you really trying to do something impactful, or are you just trying to con us? So if we know what's really impactful for our community, again, going back to that, when we know what we need to be asking for and what we need to be pushing for and demanding, then we can really articulate it to these people and hold them accountable. If we're going to be happy with just seeing Tamika Mallory pull up in a Cadillac commercial or at the Grammys, then that's what you're going to get.
So Ty, do you think that it is, once again, going back to just dangling that carrot, that pandering? You have two different, it seems, of communities within the Black communities. We talk about it a lot. You have that woke community, and then you have that, pacifists, the older generation. And I think they're the ones who go out in the masses to do the voting, especially on that Sunday turnout at the churches and everything. How do we convince that generation to kind of do a wake up, to kind of say, you know what, there's new things happening. There's new ways of looking at stuff, because if you look at the politicians, they're not per se going to the woke communities. I remember when Barack Obama was running for presidency, they asked him about reparations, and he was like, nah, I really don't think. I mean, you have white people saying yes, but he's like, nah. Now at this moment, he's like, well, it's something to think about.
Hey, Springsteen was sideways, like.
But even while he was in presidency, they asked him again. So okay, if we want to say, prior to presidency, no, he couldn't because he's trying to get that slot. But your last year in office, and you're still saying the same thing that you've been saying for the last 7 years.
That should have always been on the agenda.
He couldn't get his legislation. He couldn't get his things passed the last 6 years of his presidency. His first 2 years, he got things passed. When he got smashed, it was in 2010. Like after that, he had no more pull. He was a lame duck for almost.
I mean, but his voice means a lot, though. His voice means a lot.
You have to understand, he was the first Black president, and we wanted, excuse my language, people wanted him to be the nigger president. There was no way he was going to pass that. They were waiting for him to do something like that so they can crush him and say, this is why you can't. But I'm not even taking it to a Black president. So you can't put all that pressure on him. As now, the whole community, yes. But him for that, now the next Black president, I get it.
Now, here's my take on the Obama thing. Obama, where it really went left, Obama is a moderate in progressive clothing. He walks and talks as a civil rights leader, but he's really a moderate politician. And with that being said, like really, even if he could have or could not have gotten a lot of policies passed or whatever, he really isn't for a lot of progressive policies. He's not for, universal health care or public option or, $15 minimum wage or, a lot of progressive, dramatic, changing policies. He's really not for these things. Whether it was gay marriage or whatever, he's always willing to negotiate. I honestly, I don't think he really has a principled core where that's concerned, where any of those things are concerned.
I see Liz.
You see her face.
Liz's face is turning into Picasso. It's like,
I think he's flexible. I think he's willing to move, and pivot, all dependent upon where the winds are blowing. Like now, he's not as full-throated no to reparations like a few years ago.
Now he's ready.
He was full-throated no. Now he's just kind of
at this moment.
He's like, and to quote, I can see theoretically, right? I can see theoretically where Black people could be owed reparations. But and for me, anything but is just mute to me.
So let's say he said that in 2010, he wouldn't be a two-term president.
That is true.
We know that the first Black president, if he said anything about reparations, we'd have been like, yeah, and he gone. That would have been it. His last 2 years, he had what is that? Somebody passed in the Supreme Court. This is how much power he didn't have. As a president, he couldn't appoint a Supreme Court judge in this last year and a half. That's how much power he didn't have. So we can say a lot. He had power his first 2 years. He had complete power. After that, the Republicans took the Senate, some of the House.
But you have to understand, Speck. But here's the kicker. Everything you just said in reference to him being a 2-term president or even running, to become a president, I agree with. But once he did not become president, now Trump is now the new official president. Everybody's shocked. How did this happen? Where was his stance on that? That's what it was like. Wow. Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz. No, Liz can't hold it. Liz can't hold it. Wait, Cash. Liz can't hold it. Go ahead, Liz.
I can't. So because what Cash was saying was almost a direct response to what Kia said before that, right? So there's the woke movement, and then there's the more old school, right? And so I know Cash said that Barack, I guess, is what Kia was calling more old school, right? I personally do believe, and I know it's an unpopular opinion among the woke, right, that compromise is, you have to negotiate, right? And negotiation does come with a level of compromise. And that is the only way to move the needle forward. And I think we keep expecting some major boom and seismic shift. I mean, you get there one step at a time, right? That's how you get to the top of the staircase. You don't just leap, you know what I mean? And so, and as fantastic as that sounds, think about, it kind of also goes back to one of the, I know I'm unpopular here, right? But it kind of goes back to one of the earlier comments, why should Black people even vote if nothing changes? I would argue that a lot has changed. Not enough, it could be better. But I mean, could you imagine growing up when our parents were? And again, that woke movement, I can't get with it.
We're gonna have to stop. I'm gonna put the T on timeout real quick. The T on timeout. And the reason why I'm saying that, I give so much props to the generation of my mom's generation. I think they're the true revolutionists. They're the ones who were the Black Panthers. They're the ones who were in the streets. They were fighting, just as you've seen the insurrection. They was taking the bullets. They were the true people in reference to living on the edge and really talking and living what they say, what they mean. I think that because they were people in the background scared, we live in fear. I don't care how you cut it. I don't care what language you're saying. African American people are fearful. Now you can say, well, scientifically, it's because of the DNA and it's transferred over here, but we move in fear. The mindsets, if we had those same mindsets of the people that were in the 60s, the 5%ers and all the guy body and all those real, you know what I'm saying, revolutionists then, to the people now that there's technology and stuff, so much that would happen. When Fred Hampton came around, he wanted all impoverished people coming together because there's power in numbers. So I see that when things like that took place and people are getting locked up and people getting shot and all types of scenarios and people are still on the run in Cuba somewhere, you know what I'm saying? Political prisoners and all types of stuff. That promotes fear. And then when they have you and they arrest you for whatever trumped up charge, they make an example out of you. And you're like, wait a second, I don't want to live like that. I think that, go ahead.
It moved the marker, but it didn't move it all the way. I mean, we still don't have parity despite the arrests and despite the murders and despite the assassinations. And it moved the marker. The marker has to keep moving, right? And what we can't do is just refuse to move because it's not going to move as far as I want it to. You know what? Then I'll just keep on moving. Before you look up, before you know what's happening, I'm going to be where I want it to be. And the Panthers and Malcolm and MLK and all of them, they took those steps. But those are the same steps on the same staircase that I'm talking about, right? We're still not at the top of the staircase, but we're on the same staircase. They took steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here we are. We're at step 5 on our way to. I don't know what we would say. We had to get there.
But look, this is understand this. This is how you end up finding yourself, in a hedge maze, going around in circles, like I said, chopping down tree after tree, just playing whack-a-mole with this stuff, this incrementalism. This idea that we're going to do these small bites, bit by bit by bit by bit, we will be another 200 years. We are 200 years from when we got the right to vote, and we are still talking about and discussing and fighting for the right to vote, which honestly, we as citizens, it's our right as citizens. It's our right as citizens. This isn't something that black people should be fighting for. That black woman should not have been knocking on that door. That should have been Chuck Schumer down there knocking on that door, talking about, you know what I'm saying, you're going to let my black people in Georgia vote. We are the least of these, you know, except for the fact that it affects us. It's really not fair to put that on us as our responsibility, that the least of these is supposed to, you know, really be doing all this stuff in this country, when really as citizens, this is the basic stuff that the government is supposed to be providing.
Well, if I could chime in real quick, I'll say this, and I heard it. It was on the Ricky Smiley morning show. If anybody listens to that sometimes in the morning, and they were talking basically about Republicans. They don't move in increments. When I'm telling you they straight thugs, we're not negotiating. We're doing it like this. Oh well, and I wish you would say something.
And you know what?
Then I'm gonna move you
Trump
back
said?
2 spaces.
And you know what? And you know what Trump said when Trump was going through it. Trump wasn't, you know, look, yeah, he talked, you know, about a second term or whatever. But you know what? Ultimately, if me doing right by these white supremacists is gonna mean that I ain't gonna get a second term, then damn it, that just means I ain't gonna get a second term. And that's how Obama should have been. Well, that's at least that's, you know, when you talk about civil rights leaders or whatever, like MLK, you know, Malcolm, you know, they were down to catch a bullet for that stuff. You know,
by any means necessary.
Go ahead,
Specs.
All right. So we talk about Obama or Malcolm X. So Malcolm X had the whole nation of Islam behind him. Obama didn't have the whole black community behind him. We still fighting over he ain't do enough and we didn't do anything. That's the hypocrisy in our nation, that we put it all on him and we didn't do it. See, here's our thing. This is why we see the trees, because as a community, we don't step back and say, he can be this, but we need to push as a community. And we haven't gotten that together yet. No Obama will save us. No, there's no stupid Negro. Nobody's going to save us. We got to do this for us. So once we get that whole, I'm sorry, my phone about to die. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You gotta charge that phone. Charge it.
No, honestly, my only Obama thing is just that he's not.
There is no super person. We need to do this. The Republicans are a community. They got together across the country. It was like, let's do this all at one time. There's no one. There was just not the governor in Georgia. There was 47. It was like I forgot how many states and legislators putting together stuff, helping each other out in different states to put this all together. So it's not one governor, one person. So we need to step back, see what our power is, because our buying power is over $1 trillion, and we're 13% of the population. We have power. So once we learn how to step back, get that power, we can see the whole forest. But right now, we chopping trees, talking at each other, arguing with each other over like the next Yeezys. And the new and what rappers say.
Wait, while you're reading the comments, Specs, can you please charge your phone?
Yeah,
because now we're gonna be on you. Like, how you gonna be in a good conversation? Your phone dying.
So earlier we talked about holding folks accountable. We shooting President Obama a lot of bail. Cash want the whole pie tonight.
Is it sweet potato?
Cash getting his shout out.
All we did was build the country. That's all we did. All we did was build the country for free.
Because we, Daniel, because we allowed to have just enough to be comfortable. And see, it's that language for me and what we are allowed to have, again, like we're begging and we're asking when these are our rights. And it's, to me, it's like that disconnect. We have, Obama was not the first Black president. He is for people who don't know history. Thank you. That is very true.
Thank you for that.
Very, very true. Because for 25 to 30 years, we thought we made it.
Never would have made it.
And Democrats, Zai Winslow, Democrats fall in love with their politicians. Republicans fall in line. Yeah, and
the
Wait.
We have,
Oh, go ahead,
bro,
Need for
go ahead.
timeout.
wait, bro, stop making
So many
excuses
comments.
for that
So many
man.
comments.
He did everything the LGBTQ, and I'm going to add in IA, community needed from him. And then also really quick, thank you guys for all the love. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share while you're on here.
Yes, thank you. Because at the end of the day, these are the topics, and it is so funny. I just want to give a little disclaimer real quick. When I thought about the show, and we're like, "Hey, can we do this?" It's like, man, what topics to talk about? But we realize in the Black community, there's so many topics that you can talk about that are important that we'll never run out of topics. So that's definitely something that keeps us going, because every day there's something popping off. So thank you so much for just tuning in and expressing your viewpoints, because at the end of the day, in reference to what Humble Lion said about the first president, wasn't the first Black president, was not Barack Obama, it's going to make me pick up that book like, well, yes, I heard about that, but let me double check that. So no, definitely thank you for putting me on to that knowledge. But I wanted to say this. So we just expressed right now that they're saying that this is the new Jim Crow 2.0. I'm hearing in the rumbles, of course, we'll see down the pipeline that other states are going to start implementing the same thing. I have a quick question, and maybe one of you guys have that knowledge. So right now, if you was waiting in line at the movie theater, waiting in line to get some food, and for whatever reason you're hot or whatever, and I passed out some water to you or gave you something, I wouldn't be arrested for that. The only way I'd be arrested is if you congregated unlawfully in this area. But if you're just waiting in a simple line to get something, and I pass you a bottle of water or whatever have you, it would be fine. How are they going to be able to implement this law in reference to it's against the law to give out food for people in lines and stuff like that? So those are the things that I was wondering about, those little caveats that they threw in that bill about not being able to vote on Sundays, and and those, like, how are they going to have like people patrolling?
Yes, the police.
Yeah.
Okay.
And whenever you have a police presence in certain communities, people don't show up. So if you say, hey, we're going to have monitors out there in uniforms with badges and guns and everything else harassing you, most people are like, you know what? It's not even worth it. And they'll stay home. And that's whole point, is intimidation. That's the point, is intimidation.
We have legal firearm carriers that can also be our supporters and our gatekeepers and our monitors as well.
Right. And how many people, especially going back to Kia, the people that show up are your old school people, like your church mamas and your this. How many of them are going to go, oh God, they're coming out with guns, and they're coming out with guns, and who knows what's going to happen? You know what? I'm going to stay home. I'm going to tell my children to stay home. I'm not taking my mama out there, because if there's a riot, I'm not going to be pushing her in a wheelchair just to vote. Just forget it. It's not even worth it anymore. That's the point.
Just to add to Florida, if you guys don't know, our governor here, I dare not say his name, decided to implement a rule where, let's just say we're protesting for something that has happened, and we're walking on 23rd Street, but on 24th Street somebody is doing something unlawful, like robbing or doing something, and now I'm passing. I could be rounded up with these people who just looted, and then now all of a sudden I'm charged with a felony. And I think they're just finding ways to suppress our voice. Because definitely protesting and going to the streets is something that we definitely do. We've been doing it since the beginning. And now that will make people also be very wary of going into the streets. Maybe, go ahead, Specs.
So I was thinking about that water thing, right? So here's something that we can do. First, we become not moderators. What do you call the people, the pollers? Like the ones that go out there that actually help you, like stand in line and say, you go over here, you go over here.
Yeah.
We need to volunteer for that. So we need to do that, because that person can hand water off, right? So now we need to go to Cadillac and say, okay, you would help the Black community, have a Cadillac bus with Cadillac water, right? That's parked 100 feet away from that, so that poll worker can walk over there and then give out water, because that poll worker can do that. Nobody else can. But if Cadillac has Cadillac water and their little signage, and we have more poll workers like us that are younger, or 18 or 19 or whatever go over there and help that, we can get around this. So even though they want to build an obstacle, we can jump higher. We're built for that. But we need to figure that out because they already telling us how they're gonna do it. So we're like, okay, we can do this. So let them do that, because that's gonna be, the election was like a year and a half from now, the 2024. So we can do that. We could tell the corporate sponsors, we need you to do this, and we're gonna do this. And then that law doesn't work anymore. But right now, it's crushing. But it
I was going to even say, it's funny that you said start thinking outside the box. I know we prep specs, you know, and we talk about it on the show, Ty and Liz and everybody. But this is a way of prepping. I mean, because at the end of the day, we're sitting here like, well, I hope it goes to the Supreme Court. Well, I hope what Stacey Adams going to do? What happens if this state follows suit? Well, let's prep. So right now they say, hey, let's go a Sunday vote. We're taking these charter buses, let's plan it for Saturday. You know, right now, instead of going and doing things for Saturday, we got to go to the mall. No, we're going to do this. And then instead, anyway, they try to go ahead. And if you really realize people, if you really realize
you have to get a whole bunch of church buses running that whole time. Just get people, get them there. We got a year and a half to prep. There's no reason for us to be hit behind a year and a half from now.
And I like
True.
And I like that word prepping, just because once again, and we talk about it all the time, if you know that the system's not made for you, if you know that certain things are weren't made in your liking, then you have to prepare for that, and you have to start strategically thinking differently. Yes, there's so many points that the audience came across and said, what about this and what about that? But just as your own family, find a way to get out there and vote. Find a way, if you know somebody at this very moment, you know, so-and-so doesn't have a ID card. All they have is a student ID card. There are resources out there where you can go ahead and get a government official. Start prepping now. I'm actually going to go ahead. Made me think right now, because I know people listen to the show throughout the time frames, you know, putting that information so you guys can have it, because we know somebody. We all know, you know, a Leroy and a Tyrone or whoever, you know what I'm saying? We know somebody. I know I got a crazy Uncle Louis somewhere or whatever. You know, his name's not Louis, but you know what I'm saying. But with that being said,
name.
Yeah. I'm not using the real name, but we all know those individuals. We all know people right now in Florida. They passed the bill where people with felons can vote. But then they still say, well, wait a second, you got to pay this fine first and all these other things, you know, so we have to be strategic the way they are. While we're sleeping, they're planning. So how about we sleep less? We can sleep when we die. How about that? I know a successful billionaire by the name of Puffy who always says that, you know, we don't have time. We have no time to play games. So there's definitely a war out there.
We're doing GoFundMe pages for the woman that put Gorilla Glue in her hair. She got her whole surgery paid for. So you want to know what? If you are a felon and that fine needs to get paid, and we're starting now, why can't we do GoFundMe to start? Exactly. That's what it's about. Again, not just for that day. We need this to be ongoing. Starting stuff like this so we can pull from the funds to be able to pay out what we need to pay out. Unfortunately, life is about money. If it's about money, we could get it too. Let's stop spending it on things that we don't need.
We are over $1 trillion. I was in high school. Remember, we talked about this in my marketing class. I think we outspent our counterpart 3 times.
Something like that.
Yeah. So even though we're 13% of the population, think like we could be like what 30%? What was it? 30% of the economy. So we can bring our funds together and do so much.
Yes. And let us guys let us be unfiltered and intentional. Let us come together. I know somebody had put in the comments about leadership, and a lot of people are followers. You know, all of us here on this platform, we're all leaders, you know, in our own right. And we all have different things that we can do to be that example. So I encourage the audience listening. I encourage the people here, all my guests and co-hosts here, to be that leader and to grab somebody and teach them. And it's frustrating sometimes when you talk to the youth and they're like, you know, and they have these other little carrots dangling in front of them. But sometimes you might have to smack a young person upside the head, maybe not literally.
You have to make it relate to that. And
Yeah,
again, it's that disconnect. You have to make what their life looks like relatable to what we want them to understand. We think they're not, you know, we're saying vote, do this. Again, they worried about the new.
Don't say it. Don't
So
say
don't,
it.
I don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't
Kai.
do it.
I won't say it.
Don't say it.
We need to educate them and show them how 1 + 1 makes 2 and why it makes 2.
But there's also a lot of you know, there's a lot that, you know, those people are dealing with as well. You know, I remember myself being, you know, young and, you know, just angry and upset, you know, coming from a very, you know, poor background and everything. You know, there wasn't any time really to focus on, you know, this other stuff people are talking about. You know, the urgency and immediacy of, you know, shelter, safety, security, you know, you really don't have any time to come up for air to, you know.
Well, that's why I said since all of us
high level things.
But that's why I said since the audience, they have great viewpoints, since we have great viewpoints, that's why we have to use these tools. Of course, we can contest to growing up poor and growing up this and not having the resources, but we found a way. I think all of us on this platform have enough hustle mentality because we're from the streets to be able to say we're going to hustle our skill set to then go ahead and do much better for us. And yeah, I understand there'll definitely be pushback for our community, but at the end of the day, it's for the masses, and we have to be able to start thinking independently in regards to doing for self and taking care of our community. And they're going to be informants. There's going to be people there and trying to dangle that carrot over there and say, hey, what about this and this? And we have to stay strong, and we definitely have to unify.
But I think they'll be more attentive and more willing to listen and more energized and excited with, you know, bigger and, you know, bolder, you know, ideas and requests, you know, things that they feel is going to be really transformational and really change their lives. You know, when you look at the Hispanic community, take DACA, for instance, right? You know, American citizenship is gold. You know, I work in the mortgage industry. You cannot get finance a mortgage, you know, at least not, especially not a government one, you know, not FHA or anything like that. It'd be very difficult for you to get a mortgage loan in America and you're not here as a, you know, permanent resident or, you know, actual citizen or whatever. So you have people, you know, not even just Hispanics, you know, I saw a thing on 2020, a ring of Asians, you know, who were flying wealthy Asian women over to America, you know, in the middle of their pregnancy so that they can have their baby in America and have that automatic citizenship. You know, that is gold. And when you talk about those DACA people being able to have that citizenship, you know, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be out there voting because their citizenship is on the line. So yeah, I'm showing up come hell or high water. I'm going to be out here.
But
so
once again,
you really gave the people something to sink their teeth into, you know, i.e. reparations, which, you know, going back to what we were talking about Cadillac, in addition to those buses, I'm also going to need a Cadillac to make a statement in support of reparations. But give them.
But see for time out, Cash, because we're going to do. See for time out, Cash, and we're going to do a show about reparations. It's going to be great, and the reason why I think it's going to be a great show because a lot of people do believe
about reparations.
See for time out. Thank you.
Cash is on it today.
With that being said, the reason why I think it's going to be a great show is just because of the fact there's many people agree about it, but it's how do we get there? How do we measure who gets it and who doesn't, if they do it? And then, hey, at the end of the day, if we're trying to close the wealth gap, will we take this money that we received and then just blow it on the Louis store and the Versace store? I mean, like I said, we're going to get there with all that, the ins and outs. But with that being said, that is definitely going to be a show. That's definitely going to be a show that is many perspectives on that. I encourage everybody to go ahead and just do your research on what's going on with these new laws and voter suppression and voting in general. At the end of the day, know who you're voting for. Know that at the end of the day, hold these politicians, these city councilmen accountable. You have to hold them accountable, because if you do not, they will walk all over you. At the end of the day, I don't see Biden running for presidency for the next term, but I do see Kamala trying to. Hold her ass accountable. I'm sorry, sister. You know, you walk with your Converse and your pearls. I understand you apart, you know, the AKs and all that, but we're going to hold you accountable. There's some things that we want, and you better represent. Go ahead, Liz.
So we were talking about voter suppression this evening, right? And suppression literally means holding you down. That's what it means, right? And so before we start holding other people accountable and everything else, let's start with holding ourselves accountable. Things that you mentioned, Kia. You know, we get $5 or $500, and the first thing we do is run to the mall. That's illogical, right? We are suppressing ourselves a lot. Now, if you're not willing to do for you, do not expect anybody else to. If you don't take yourself seriously and your finances seriously, when you do get 2 cents, do not expect anybody else to take you seriously either. I mean, it starts someplace, right? You know, anybody that's ever seen me on the show knows I always say words have meanings, right? So when you're online, I don't care how poor you are, most of these kids, most of these adults are online somehow, some way or another, right? You know what they're doing? They are following a lot of people, a lot of trend topics, a lot of stupid things. Let's call it what it is. Just following just dumb shit. I'm sorry, I can't even help myself, right? I mean, start following things and people that make sense, right? And stop branding yourself a follower too, right? Think about what you sound like when you say, oh, I follow her or I follow him. You need to start leading somebody. And you need to start following people that are taking you someplace. So when we're talking about voter suppression, let's start thinking about, how are we suppressing ourselves? What are we doing to uplift ourselves? And I mean, granted, we can't get to Washington, D.C. all the time, but we can get home, right? We can get to the bank. We can not get to the mall sometimes. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to have nice things, but those nice things, you know, roofs, education, those are the nice things that we should be concerned with, because I promise you, those nice things will buy the other nice things that we want here and now. You know, we need to learn how to see through the trees. We just have to.
And see through the trees and then get a match and then burn that shit. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ty. Burn this.
Burn it.
Go ahead, Ty. Go ahead, Ty. Let's close it out.
I go back to what, you know, Cash's analogy with the trees. Listen, bulldoze, use a saw, an axe. I don't care how we do it. If we're doing it in a large amount, or we're taking little baby steps. If I got to take my teeth and gnaw through it, do what you have to do. And again, we have to be accountable to and for ourselves first.
Very true.
And then collectively, we can start making other people accountable. Don't take no shorts, because they're not. It goes back to always being prepared. Preparation is key. Strategy is key. They know their next move.
Yes, they do. They have it planned out many years in advance.
Yep.
We got to get it together.
Last comment, Specs and Cash.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm all about accountability, but you know, I'm cautious that in that same vein, people will quick to be saying, well, you guys need to show a little bit of accountability and get yourself some ID, some driver's licenses and things like that, so you can go vote. We're going to put this other hurdle here, but you know what? You guys need to be resourceful. You guys need to show some accountability, you know, some personal responsibility. And you know, if you really want to vote, you know, you need to do this and you need to do that. So that personal responsibility thing, we've been bludgeoned with that, you know, the last 500 years. And so I'm always cautious in how I use that. But To wrap up, I'm definitely myself an avid voter. I don't want that to be any sort of takeaway tonight. I'm an avid voter. I think voting is our right as citizens. It's very important. It's one arm of just many strategies that we need to be doing. Voting by itself isn't going to do anything, but if you do many other things and then you don't vote, it doesn't work either. So definitely get engaged with politics and everything. So I thank you guys for who were here and who came out and watched and in the chat and engaging and trying to learn a little bit more about how we can improve our situation here.
Go ahead, Specs.
So Republicans showed their hand a year and a half before the fight. So as a trained fighter, you watch other fighters. So, and if you're training for a fighter, you watch their habits, right? So if a fighter throws a jab, but drops his support hand, so he'll throw the jab and drop his hand. So next time he throws the jab and drop his hand, you scoot to the side and hit him with a power punch. As soon as he drop it, hit him in the chin, knock him out, right? He showed you what he's going to do. They gave us a year and a half. So he wrote a law, and all these other, I'm stuttering. The Republicans are going to write similar laws. So we can go around and say, okay, we can get the water, we can get you the IDs, we can do that. So every obstacle you're telling us you're going to put together in a year and a half, we can beat you to that. Yep. So we need to get together, think about what we need to do as a community.
Yep.
Go to corporate that's taking dollars from us, and they are asking us, how can we help? We need this, we need that. And then as a community, get ready, which Stacey Abrams had already done, but we need to do it nationally. We see the example that Georgia that just happened in Georgia. So they try to change the rules, but they doing it too soon. So now they showing their hand. So we can counter that, and we need to do that. We need to have a plan, get it together now. Every community should be working, so Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, Alabama, every person of color that wants to see change and needs to be involved in it. Don't ask for the change. You want to try to be the change. You need to be the change. So, and then grab somebody. If somebody is hemming and hawing, grab them. But if somebody is running away from you, don't run after them. Don't waste that energy. You can't save everybody. Harriet Tubman couldn't save everybody, but you know what? She had a gun. So she was like, all right, if you gonna run, you ain't gonna make it back. But you will not stop the progress. So we need to have that same mentality.
You better go ahead. You better go ahead, brother. You better go ahead. Specs. Okay. No.
Okay.
But just to wrap it up and everything, I want to say thank you guys. I when he mentioned the word national, of course, YouTube, you can watch it overseas and everything. But I would love for this show. And the show is going to be a thing where everyone's nationally watching it, just like the biggest Boyce Watkins and these other individual people. And the reason why I say that, because a lot of times when I see the ones that we know already, it's kind of like, man, what are you really doing for the community? What is really going on? Let's see what let's run somebody's resume. I remember our cousin Ty Libra, if you're listening, she said, show me what you've been doing. You do a lot of this, but what have you been really doing in the background? So definitely I want this show to be out there so that pass the show around. Make sure you like and subscribe. It's on YouTube, Unfiltered and Intentional. Used to be called Mothers Unfiltered. It still owns the brand. It's okay. It's the same thing. We'll make it work. But at the end of the day, please, please, please share, because this is how we get the knowledge out. And knowledge is power. And you have to be able to prep. Because they're prepping, they already have this stuff planned. While you're asleep, while you're learning the latest goddamn TikTok move. I can't stand that thing. Please, 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 please go ahead and do that. We're not gonna go down the rabbit hole this time.
Going down, but you can go down rabbit hole.
We have 2 comments here real quick before we go. It says, love the analogy, really cool. And then also, good show tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you guys. Please share, and like. Bye, everyone.
Love you.